Thank you, बहुत शुक्रिया. Thank you for the invitation. जैसा साहब ने कहा कि I've been working as a software engineer. Even though I studied electrical engineering, EME से मैंने डिग्री ली back in 2000, डिग्री 18. लेकिन immediately उसके बाद जब मैंने career अपना शुरू किया तो I started as a software engineer. And I've been working as a software engineer ever since. Um, so I have worked in many different industries. ये फायदा है सॉफ्टवेयर इंजीनियरिंग का कि आप बहुत सी मुख्तलिफ इंडस्ट्रीज में काम कर सकते हैं बिकॉज इट्स ऑलमोस्ट नीडेड एवरीवेयर. Currently I am working as a principal software engineer at Microsoft. उससे पहले I was at Amazon. um, US में working on supply chain optimization, mathematical models and solving complex numerical problems. उससे पहले I used to live in Australia, worked on industrial automation, mining or agriculture में. So predominantly vehicle automation, GPS based vehicle control and vehicle tracking and all that sort of stuff. करियर मेरा स्टार्ट हुआ था पाकिस्तान में. Enabling Technologies के नाम से कंपनी थी. We used to work in telecom, voice over IP, very early days of voice over IP. So I've worked in small companies and I've worked in big companies. I have um, and I've worked in, like I said, different industries. So जब सोहेब ने स्टॉक की बात की थी तो what I thought would be useful is to talk about things that are maybe not necessarily related to software engineering, but more general things that I've learned over the years, things that have helped me grow my career. Um, so hopefully that will be useful for a broader audience जो कि मुख्तलिफ industries में या मुख्तलिफ positions पे काम कर रहे हैं. Most of my career, almost all of my career, I've worked as an individual contributor. Uh, I don't have much experience managing people, so most of this will be relevant for individual contributors. Some of it will be hopefully relevant for people managers as well. So let's get started. So before we get to beyond the basics, I thought I'll cover a little bit of what I think are the basic skills for growing your career, for being a good employee, if you can put it that way. So first thing is obvious. You have to be good at your job, right? You cannot really grow your career without being good at your job, whatever that job might be, right? For individual contributors, मेरा जो ख्याल है, जो मेरा opinion है, मेरा experience है, you have to find your niche. You have to find your expertise and become an expert in that. Especially in software engineering, there are many different avenues, many different areas that you can work in, and those areas keep growing, right? हमारे सामने most recently AI became a thing. उससे पहले machine learning पे बड़ा जोर था. उससे पहले ऑटोमेशन पे बड़ा काम हो रहा था. ऑप्टिमाइजेशन पे बड़ा काम हो रहा था. Networking, security, and all kinds of different things, right? And even within that, you have front end and back end and middleware and operating systems and research and all kinds of things, right? So it is important to find your niche and try to develop your expertise, because nobody can do everything. अगर आप मुख्तलिफ areas में jump करते रहेंगे तो then it becomes really difficult, because other people will be better at you than better at their job than you, because they have not moved around all that much. So try to find your need and become an expert. Learning is obviously important. Any career, any industry has to requires you to learn continuously. So you have to continue to learn. So becoming an expert and continuing to learn, for me, are not contradictory to each other, right? An expert doesn't Being an expert doesn't mean that you know everything. It just means that you're very good at that area. So you also know what to learn next, right? So that's sort of the mindset that you have to have. Um, work hard and smart is something that I believe in. It's not really, I don't agree when people say work smart, not hard, because other people are working smart as well, and they're also working hard. So if you're only working smart, they're going to do better than you. So you have to work hard and work smart. Um, Working hard doesn't mean that you have to work 14, 16, 20 hours. That's not what I mean by work hard, right? Work hard means to understand your priorities, to balance them, to figure out what is important, what is not important. जब आप grow करते हैं अपने career में, you will have to learn how to delegate, even without being a manager. When you're a senior engineer, when you're a senior anything really, part of your job is to delegate. And something that we maybe don't put a lot of emphasis on is asking for help, right? My rule of thumb is try by yourself for 30 minutes. If you're making progress, keep going, right? If you're not making progress, 30 minutes is enough time to figure out that you're not making progress. Then go ask for help, because otherwise you're just going to be wasting your time. Somebody else can answer that maybe in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then put you on the right track. So asking for help is very important. Um, Even at a personal level, asking for help has another benefit, which is that it helps you overcome your ego, because that's the first step that you have to do when you're asking for help. So from a spiritual or um, personal perspective, asking for help is a good thing. It's a positive thing, I think. um, be positive. That's really, really important. um, Finding solutions. Anybody can find and report problems, right? Your customers will be reporting problems. Your counterparts will be reporting problems. Your whoever, right? Issues har banda dhoond leta hai. But if you can find solutions, if you can bring solutions to the conversation, then you will be heard and you will be recognized for solving problems. Um, Taking responsibility for your work, for your area, it's extremely important. Um, it builds trust and it builds confidence in your abilities if you're able to take responsibility. Now, taking responsibility does not mean taking blame, right? Taking responsibility means um, being responsible for this, finding answers, finding solutions. Even if you're not the one doing it, even if it's your colleagues or your reports who are doing it, you still have to be the one who says, okay, yep, we'll do it. We'll go figure this out, right? You don't have to have every answer, but you have to take responsibility for finding those answers. And lastly, have a no blame mindset. Blame is a negative thing, right? Blame is not the same as criticism or critique, right? You have to be critical. When you see a problem, when you see an issue, when you see a mistake, you have to be critical of that. But blame is a negative thing, right? Is blame is done to make the person who made a mistake. The purpose of it is to make them feel bad, right? Whereas a critique or a criticism, the purpose of that is to make them fix their mistakes and help them, get better, right? So no harm in doing, constructive feedback, constructive criticism, but blame is a bad thing. It's a negative thing. It just creates a bad environment just in general around you. And also blaming others for mistakes also means that they also get credit for fixing it, right? If you're working in a team और आप हमेशा ये कहते रहें कि ये फलाने की गलती है, फलाने की गलती है, right? तो जब वो गलतियां ठीक होती हैं, then the credit for that also goes to those people, right? You're just you just become the megaphone, right? You just say stuff. You don't actually do stuff, right? That's the mindset that, or that's the perspective that people get of you if all you do is blame people, right? So having a no blame mindset is really, really helpful and useful in making you stand out from the general crowd, right? And lastly, look after yourself. It's super important to manage your time. Um, like I said, 14, 15, 16 ghante, nobody can sustain that kind of days, right? So you have to be able to manage your time. You have to be able to work with your manager, with your leaders, whoever they are, with your team, to figure out how to effectively use your time, um, and not get burned out, right? Because career जो है like 30-40 साल का career होता है, right? Nobody can sprint for that long, right? So you have to, maybe early in your career, when you don't have a lot of responsibilities and a lot of energy, it's fine. But longer term, you have to be able to manage your time. Um, you have to center your well-being, because if you're not well, if you're not healthy, you cannot do good work, right? So obviously, life has its ups and downs, but you have to try to center your well-being. Many, many years ago, I was attending this training workshop, and one of the things that the trainer was talking about was, the first thing that goes when you get busy, the first thing that you start compromising on is the time you spend going to the gym, or the time that you used to spend playing a sport or whatever it is, right? Because you feel guilty doing it, right? Because you feel like you're wasting your time when you should be working on this mega problem that you're supposed to solve, or this product that you're supposed to launch, right? But the reality is that you're not wasting your time. You're actually using it to keep yourself healthy, so that you can keep doing what you're doing. Because again, whatever it is that you're doing is not going to be a 1 month, 2 month, even a 1 year problem, right? When you look at it from a career length perspective, you're going to be doing that thing for 10, 15, 20 years, right? So you have to look after yourself, to be able to do it for that long. And you have to take breaks, right? It's human nature to want and need uh, time away from pretty much anything, really, right? Especially work. So you have to take breaks. You have to find time to take breaks. There is no good time to take a vacation. So, you have to take vacations whenever you want to and can, right? You can't wait for the perfect time. There is no such thing. So anyway, these are some of the basics that I think are important for longevity of career. Um, and um, that regardless of your industry, we should all remind ourselves of some of these things. So moving on, what develops a career, or what progresses a career, is the impact that you have, right? Especially in software engineering, there used to be this mindset of counting lines of code and that sort of stuff, right? Kitna code likha hai, kitna, right? Kitne bug solve kiye hain, that kind of stuff, right? Enumerating or counting these things is counterproductive, right? What you have to think about is, what is the impact that you're having, right? Because at the end of the day, vast majority of us are going to work for companies that work for profit, right? And their purpose is to make money, right? Their secondary purpose, if you can think of it that way, right? The secondary purpose is how to make money, right? So somebody will have a product, somebody will have, some company will be selling services, some company will be, doing supporting freelancers or whatever it might be, right? But at the end of the day, they're looking to make money, right? Um, to increase their profit margin. So you have to find your place, your position in all of that machination of making money for the company, right? Um, it might not sound very nice to put it that way, but in my opinion, having clarity of vision as to what is your place in your industry is super important in figuring out how to grow your career. So impact is one of the most important things, to figure out what is what is this, the shape of this impact in your company, in your industry, in your organization. It can also be a good eye-opening exercise that if you don't like what you see, what you find in the company or the organization that you're working in, what counts as impact, then maybe it's time to, find some other job or some other occupation, right? So being blind to it doesn't help. You kind of have to know how what counts as impact in your company, right? Now, जब आप अपना career grow कर रहे हैं, when you start, right? When you first start your career, for any early in career people, right? Vast majority of impact is going to be your own deliverables, right? So from the perspective of software engineering, junior software engineer का काम क्या होता है? Code लिखना, right? For the vast majority of your time, you're going to be writing code, right? And you're going to deliver whatever it is that you're being asked to do, whether it's a feature or a bug fix or whatever it is, right? And I think it's true for most industries, and maybe I'm not right in that, but generally speaking, when you're junior, most of your impact comes from the day-to-day work that you do, right? Um, but as you grow in your career, the next sort of area of impact, the next sphere of impact that you can start to leverage is building on the work of others, right? Um, that's what teams are for, right? Because a good team can be, bigger than the sum of its parts, right? More impactful than the sum of its parts. Because a team, generally speaking, it doesn't mean कि हर बंदा जो है वो उसने अपनी लाइन पकड़ी हुई है और वो चल रहा है, right? Generally speaking, effective teams build on each other, right? एक बंदा ये काम कर रहा है, दूसरा बंदा उसके ऊपर build कर रहा है, उससे अगला बंदा उसके ऊपर build कर रहा है. That's how you grow your impact as an individual and also as a team. So recognizing when you can leverage somebody else's work, right? To deliver the next level of impact is really important, and being professional in that, right? That and ethical, right? Is super important. So building on the work of others doesn't mean stealing other people's work, right? It just means utilizing what has already been done and then building on top of that, right? In legal, ethical manner, obviously, right? But then as you grow further, the next sphere of impact that shows up in your career is contributing to the success of others, right? You become a mentor. You become the person who answers questions. Maybe you become a manager, right? Most of the impact that you have as a manager is by contributing to the success of others, right? You become the coach for your team. You become the one who helps them grow, and as they grow, you grow, right? So, but even as an individual contributor, it is super important to kind of start thinking about how can I help others succeed. Why? Because when you help more people succeed, again, going back to the beginning idea of impact, right? The more you can contribute towards the end goal for your organization, for your company, the more impact you have and the more recognition you will have for that impact. So if you can train 5 people to be super impactful, and people know that you're the one who did the training, right? You're the one who's mentoring them, you're the one who's coaching them, that their impact also counts for you, right? So that's how you kind of grow your impact in the company, because as a single person, as an individual, you can't grow your impact. There's a limit to how much time you can spend doing work, right? Everybody has the same number of hours in the day. So how you grow your impact is by leveraging these other areas, or moving into these other areas of impact. So that's sort of the trifecta of impact, which is the bedrock of growing your career. The more impact you can have towards the end goal of your organization, or your company, or your team, or your university, or whatever it might be, right? The faster your career will grow, right? Um, So I kind of wanted to talk about impact a little bit before we start kind of getting into some of the processes or skills or ways you can leverage that. And so now, let's get into how you drive for impact, right? So like I said, first thing you have to do is understand your business. You need to understand what business your company is in, right? Um, and sometimes it feels like it goes without saying, but it's not all that clear, especially in large organizations. A lot of people have no idea what the actual business of their company is, right? So understanding that is really, really important. Um, Understanding what metrics your business tracks and what moves that needle, right? If you're in the services industry, maybe customer satisfaction is the most important thing. If you're in a for-profit industry, you're going to have or a product industry, revenues might be what drive it. If you're in other cases, it might be cost reduction, all kinds of things. So you have to understand what are the driving metrics for your business. um, then the next thing is you have to connect your work to business metrics. If you're working on something that does not move the needle, you have to really ask yourself, why am I doing this? Right? Because we don't really work for fun, right? The whole idea is to understand, why am I being asked to do this work? And is this work useful? And is this work useful for the company? Is it going to move something, right? So again, this just kind of builds on this idea that you have to be super focused on delivering impact, right? Um, and work with your leadership and with your managers to understand how your work connects to these business metrics that you're trying to move. Again, the prioritization has to be based on impact, right? Especially as your career grows, you're going to find that your backlog or the list of asks is just too long. And it's always going to be too long, right? You'll be asked to do more things that you can possibly ever do, right? And it will always grow. So you have to be able to prioritize based on what is the highest impact and work on that, right? Because then it's much easier to go justify why you didn't do this other thing, right? Or why you're going to say no to this other thing that is being asked to do, that you've been asked to do, right? Because you can make a logical argument to say, well, this other thing that I'm working on is super important, and here's why. It's going to bring in $10 million, right? What you're asking me to do is going to bring in $1 million. Now, for us, $1 million is massive, but when you start comparing these things, that this other thing is $10 million, that's 10 times the impact, right? So why would I waste time on 1 million when I should be working on 10 million, right? So don't think from your perspective, think from the perspective of the company, right? What moves the needle most, right? And prioritize based on that. This is a really important lesson that I'm kind of learning right now. You have to understand how much is good enough, right? We cannot drive for perfection because there's an element of diminishing returns, right? You can get your product or your bug fix or your whatever it is, right, to a point where it is good enough, right, where it is meeting the benchmarks, where you have delivered the impact, right? That's it, the impact is done now. You can spend another 10-20% of effort to make it perfect, right? But is that really the best use of your time? So it's a nuanced thing. You have to really kind of think about, maybe there is benefit in that. Maybe there's benefit for future proofing and that sort of stuff, right? But you really have to ask yourself, am I spending my time wisely, right? Am I spending my time on something that actually delivers impact, right? So that's it's a hard thing, but you have to kind of figure out how to how to make that judgment call. Now, the second thing, we're going to change gears a little bit. This is my super important thing for me personally, and I tell that to everybody that I mentor. You have to pay attention, right? You have to pay attention on what's going on around you. You cannot be just heads down on the one task that you have if you want to grow, right? Grow by definition means to broaden, to get to where you're not, right? So you cannot do that by just looking down and focusing on what's right in front of you, right? So the paying attention takes many shapes and forms, but one of the most important things is to absorb and retain information. right? Retain doesn't mean you have to memorize it, right? Notes le lein, recording kar lein, whatever it is, right? Whatever works for you, right? But you have to retain information and you have to absorb information. Um, I am a big believer in reading all my emails, reading all my instant messages, right? Now, all doesn't mean every single one. You know, we have hundreds of emails that come in from automated robots and that sort of stuff, right? Even at work. Those I filter out. But emails that land in my inbox, I spend 15 minutes every morning to catch up on emails that I received overnight. And then every evening before I leave work, I spend 15 minutes closing out all my emails, right? Not because I'm going to respond to every one of them, but because they're going to have nuggets of information, right? And they're going to be super useful later on, right? Um, recently, दो तीन दफा इस तरह हुआ है कि लोगों ने मुझसे पूछा है how were you able to solve this problem? How did you know to contact this team or to go look at this wiki to figure out how to solve this bug that we're facing, right? And literally the only reason was that I was reading my emails, right? Because I could remember that, oh, I vaguely remember something to do with this area. So let me search in my emails. Oh, here it is. Here's the link to the wiki. Go to the wiki. Oh, here's what I need to do to fix this thing. Here you go, done, right? But if you're not receiving those emails, if you're not paying attention to those emails, if you're not retaining that information, you're not going to know, right? For your day-to-day job, that might not be a problem, right? But it's not going to make you stand out because somebody else is going to do what I did and they're going to solve the problem, not you, right? So if you want to be the problem solver, then you have to pay attention, right? I also suggest to people to actually join distribution lists, mailing lists. A lot of people try to get out of them, right? Remove themselves from distribution lists. I never remove myself from any distribution list. I've been with Microsoft for 8 years. I'm still on the distribution list and mailing list that I joined when I first joined Microsoft. I'm not even in the same organization anymore, but I still think that there might be something useful in there. So, and sometimes there is, right? Um, you have to continually broaden your channels of information. So join distribution lists, join teams channels, attend all hands, attends all team meetings, whatever it is, right? You have to go do those things so that you can get information that isn't directly presented to you. You have to listen to your leadership, right? That doesn't mean you have to agree with your leadership. It just means that you have to hear what they're saying and understand what they're talking about, right? If your director, your VP, your CEO is talking about something, right? And they've been talking about something for a little while, that thing for a little while, right? That's obviously important for the business, right? You might not understand why it's important for the business, but it is important for the business, right? Most likely because they have access to data and they have visibility on the market that you don't have, right? So trust them to do their job as well. And if you don't trust them, again, you probably should be looking for a different job, but you should trust your leadership that they know what they're doing as well, and pay attention to that, right? And then again, try to connect your work to what they're talking about, because if you can solve a big problem that your director, your VP, your CEO wants to solve, that will have a massive impact on your career, because they will know that, well, somebody will know that you're the one who solved that problem, right? um, these last two kind of go hand in hand, and they're really, 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 really important. Never ask the same question twice, and never have to be told the same thing twice, right? Because nobody has time. Nobody has time to waste on me, on you, because we didn't pay attention the first time, we didn't take notes the first time, we didn't, retain that information the first time, right? And also it makes you seem unqualified for the job, right? Because you're asking the same question over and over again. So it starts to build that perception that you're not good at your job just because you didn't write it down the first time, right? So don't give people this impression that you don't know your job, even though you actually do know your job, right? But perceptions and impressions matter, right? So because especially people who are, your manager and whatnot, when it comes to promotions and all that, right? They all get together and they have a conversation about careers, okay? And if this other manager who sits next to, for the next team over, if he's sitting there saying, yeah, I don't know if that guy is good, man. Like he keeps asking the same question over and over again, right? That is going to tank your opportunity for your promotion, right? So pay attention, take notes, make sure that you're writing things down if you need to. Rely on your memory if you're young, but if you're old like me, you have to write things down, right? So write things down and make sure that you're not asking the same question over and over again. Okay. Communicate effectively. This is super important. First thing, especially for early in career, listen more in meetings and conversations and speak less. That doesn't mean that you don't speak your mind, you don't speak your ideas. What this means to me is, you know, whatever is being presented, whatever is being said, sit with it, chew on it, think about it, and then speak, right? Because you have to say things that matter, right? Just speaking doesn't help. You have to, what you're saying has to hold some weight, right? So think before you actually speak. Um, Understand the desired outcome for whatever it is that you're communicating, right? So this is important when you're sending an email, doing a presentation, sending a Teams message, whatever it is that you're doing, especially around presentations and status reports and that sort of stuff, right? What is it that you're trying to get out of that, right? Why are you doing it? Why are you presenting? What's the purpose, right? And questioning that is going to lead you towards presenting your information in a way that lands on that outcome, right? So you have to, writing an email is the same thing. You want to ask somebody for help or maybe somebody for information, or you want to send out a status, right, to your leadership or to your customers or whatever it is, right? There's a purpose behind your communication. So think about what is 1, 2, 3, 10 different outcomes, whatever it is that you're trying to get out of that communication, right? And then work backwards from that to figure out, okay, well, how do I get there, right? So for example, if you're looking for funding for a project, right, you can't start off by saying that, well, this email is about getting some funding, right? You have to start off by saying, well, here's the project that I want to work on. Here's the impact that it's going to have, right? These are the metrics that we're going to move. We're going to need this many people. We're going to need this thing and that thing. And then talk about, okay, we would love for you to fund this project, right? You're building that narrative to land on the outcome that you're trying to get. The reason why I bring that up is because so many people, I find, they write emails, they write messages, sometimes even give presentations, and you have no idea what they're trying to get out of it, right? So it becomes a bit of a useless thing. So useless things are by definition useless, right? So if you're communicating, make it useful. You have to tailor your information and delivery for your audience, right? There's a big difference between giving a presentation to your team and giving the same presentation to your director or your VP or the CEO or to your customer or whatever, right? What you're going to present to your team is going to be very different from what you're going to present to, your leader who's maybe 3 levels above, right? This is not about a hierarchy thing. It's about what is their perspective, what are they going to get out of what is it that you're presenting or what is it that you're sending? How much prior knowledge do they have, right? One of the most common mistakes that people make is they start using acronyms, right? ICMS ये करता है और RDX वो करता है और वगैरह वगैरह, right? किसी को नहीं पता ICMS क्या है, RDX क्या है. Nobody has any clue what you're saying, right? So define things, figure out who you're talking to, whether they know what you're talking about, and build from that, right? So you can also go the negative, right, on that. You can also go into too much information when you should not, right? So people get bored, right? So you have to kind of strike that balance of where should I start and then what's the story that I'm going to tell. The next one is more about meetings and discussions. You have to learn how to argue logically and effectively, right? Um, Emotional arguments don't help, right? You have to bring data to the problem. You have to bring logic to the problem. If you want your opinion to be heard, to be listened to, and potentially taken as the final outcome, you have to be able to argue with evidence, with data, with some concrete foundation to be able to have that effective argument. And you can't fight, right? This is not an argument, is not a fight. It's a debate. You're trying to figure out what's the best outcome, right? um, and be open to change your mind in the face of evidence. You might be wrong, right? You have to accept that. We have to accept that we might be wrong. you know um, as you grow in your career and as you get more information and more experience behind you, you're going to be right more often than you're wrong. But still, sometimes you are going to be wrong, so be ready to change your mind, when somebody proves that you're wrong. And you have to bring everyone along on the journey. This is something really important, especially in these days of hybrid meetings. You have to make sure that everybody is getting time to speak, to understand, and to follow what is it that you're talking about, right? Um, and again, if you're the one who brings that up to say, hey, let's slow down a minute. Let's just check with this person. You haven't said anything. You know, can you talk? Can you bring up your idea? Can you talk about that a little bit, right? Even if that person can't affect your career, the leadership maybe in that room is going to notice that, and they're going to remember that you were the one who brought up you know this point that we should wait for, or we should listen to everybody who's there in the room. It's an important leadership skill anyway, but yeah, it helps with your communication. um, be influential. um, Again, with impact, the a best friend of impact, or how to get to impact, is to be influential, especially when you're an individual contributor, because again, you're not going to be able to do everything yourself. So you have to tell other people to do stuff, and because you're not their manager, you're not their boss, they don't have to listen to you. So you really have to exercise influence um, on them, so that they will willingly do what you're asking them to do, right? So the first thing you have to do is, again, you have to deep dive into your own area and become an expert, because people respect experts. If you're not an expert, or if they don't think that you're an expert, they're not going to respect what you're saying, right? It's not about you as a person, but they're not going to respect your ideas, right? Um, the next thing you have to think about is adjacencies. What's next to my area of expertise, and how do I connect all of these dots, all of these puzzle pieces? How do I put all of this together? So the bigger picture you have, the more intelligently you can speak about the whole area that you're trying to cover. And again, it goes to show everybody who you're talking to, or who you're trying to influence, or the decisions that you're trying to influence. It conveys that you know what you're talking about, right? It also gives you opportunities to do bigger and better things than whatever was your area of expertise to begin with. Um, you have to drive towards timely and thoughtful solutions, or decisions. Sorry. Um, there's nothing worse than not having a decision, right? Even bad decisions, you can walk those back, but the limbo of not having a decision is killer for projects, and for your work and your impact and so on, right? um, why does that matter to you for your career? um, you might start a project thinking that it has huge impact, right? But because of lack of decision making and delays and things like that, by the time you deliver it, it does not have that impact anymore, because you're not first to market, right? Somebody else got there first. So that's just one example of how you can lose impact, even though it was legitimate when you started, because you didn't get to the end as quickly as you could have. Um, when you're the one who's the decision maker, be quick about it. But when you're not, demand that a decision is made, right? And there's, you know, we can get into details at some other time, maybe of how you do that. But you have to be able to ask people and demand people who are making decisions to make them so that you can get on with your life and with your work, right? Learn to influence without authority. That's a super difficult thing to do. And I'm still kind of trying to figure that out. But basically, all of these things that, the other three things, they kind of culminate towards this, right? People listen to you because you're the expert, because you understand the big picture, because you're the one who is driving, who's understanding and figuring out what are the decision points and pushing for those decisions to be made, right? So slowly and gradually people start looking towards you as this figure of authority, even though you have no authority, right? Even though you're not the manager, you're not the boss, but people will look towards you for as an authority figure, right? um, so again, for an individual contributor, that's your kind of career path, right? The more influence you have, the more authority you can wield, the bigger impact you're going to have, and the bigger impact you're going to have, the faster your career will grow, right? So that's kind of how these sort of dots connect. Okay. Um, and lastly, the invest in mentoring and coaching. This kind of connects with building on or helping others succeed, right? Um, again, mentoring and coaching people, new hires, junior than you, and so on and so forth, right? It's a two-way street. You're going to learn a lot from them. So that's, an area of gaining more information and understanding more about the business. But it is also a way to guide and teach and influence people who are early in career, and they're going to model or they're going to exercise what you're coaching them, right? um, so if you believe in something to be the right thing to do, whatever that might be for your profession, for your industry, now there's one other person who's doing it, so automatically that increases your area of influence, and wherever they end up in their career, they will speak well of you. So that matters. Doing good matters in itself, but it also helps that people are speaking well of you professionally. Networking. Um, you have to network if you want to grow your career, in my opinion, right? You can't work and live in a silo and expect to grow your career in organizations, large organizations. If you're self-employed, if you're a sole worker, obviously you don't need this, right? You probably still need this to get work, to get your customers to work with you. But if you're working in an organization, you have to network. And the first thing about you know get your own wins, you have to recognize when you've done well, and not it's not about being pompous or peacocking and that sort of stuff. It's about taking credit when credit is due, and being happy about it, and being and celebrating that success, right? um, you have to eradicate comparison, right? Y- what that means in general, right, is that you have to get out of your own mindset, out of your own mind, this idea that you have to compare yourself with another person. Now, the reality is that when it comes to growing careers, you are being compared with other people. That's how these career conversations work, right? Who's better than who, right? But it's constantly thinking about that becomes a negative mindset, right? Work on yourself, work on your career, work on your thing. Don't worry about how that compares with others. Some people are going to be better than you, some people are going to be less good, you know not worse, but less better than you, right? So you're going to find your place shifting in this spectrum of people that you work with, right? And that's okay. You have to walk your own journey, right? So try to avoid comparing yourself with other people. I find in it's a peaceful way to live just in general. um you have to take interest in others and their thoughts and experiences. Nobody wants to talk to you if all you do is talk about yourself, right? You have to listen to what they have to say. You don't have to be, I mean, we're talking about professional networking, right? You don't have to be interested in the person. You don't really have to be interested in their hobbies or their family lives or whatever. Also, you don't have to share any of that. Networking, professional networking does not mean that you have to share your private life with people, right? It's about being interested in their ideas related to your work, your profession, and it is about presenting your ideas and thoughts and experiences pertaining to your work and your experience. And if it goes beyond that, it goes beyond that. But that's the crux of it, right? You have to understand. You have to be interested in what they have to say. You have to market yourself. This was really uncomfortable for me when I started my career. Most industries, I think, have this concept of writing your performance reviews. When I started my career, that was not a thing, right? 20 saal pehle, your manager used to write your performance review, and that was it, right? It was a very authoritarian kind of setup, very hierarchical setup. Now, most industries ask you to write your own performance review first, right? And then your manager responds. Um, so your performance reviews and all of that, you have to be able to say, look, I'm good at this, right? I did this well. Um, it's networking is kind of similar. You have to be able to speak to it to say, look, I am, this is who I am, this is what I do, right? And I'm good at this. It's a hard thing to do sometimes, and there's a balance to be struck there, but you have to do that. And especially when you're networking with people who can help you grow your career, you also have to be comfortable talking about what it is that you want to do. I'll just give you one quick example from my own career. Many years ago, I was working for Amazon, and during a Christmas party, I was talking to one of the directors there, my director actually, just over food and stuff, right? And he was asking me like, you know, what are your thoughts? What do you want to do? And so on and so forth. So I told him, hey, I want to try, my hand at management because I've been working as an IC for so long. I want to try my hand at management. A year later, next Christmas, I get called into my manager's office and he said, hey, there's a management position opening up. Do you want it? Right. So a year later, he remembered that conversation. He said, ask him if he wants that job. I took it. I didn't like it. That's a whole other story. But point is that people do remember what you said, right? And especially if you impress them or if they find you useful and valuable in other areas, right? That's going to like all of this going to cement together and leave them with that thought in their head that, oh, maybe I should think about promoting this person or giving them this opportunity or whatever it is, right? So it really helps to talk about what is it that you want. Um, you have to develop and maintain connections. A couple of days ago, or like a couple of weeks ago, sorry, I was talking to a colleague of mine. I was talking about my team lead from 20 years ago, and she was surprised that I still remembered his name. But I remember his name. I remember his name. I know what he does now. I know where he lives. I know what company he works for, right? Because I maintain that connection. That doesn't mean that we're texting to each other or emailing. I haven't spoken to him in years, right? I haven't spoken to him in years, but I'm connected to him on LinkedIn. And every now and then, a milestone pops up in LinkedIn saying, he's done this or he's achieved this or whatever. And I just send him a message to say, hey, congratulations, you're doing well, good job, right? Whatever. And he does the same for me. So these connections, they span your career. And if I ever end up back in that industry where I worked with him or whatever, I can reach out to him and say, hey, I'm looking to move or whatever, do you have any opportunities? It pays off in a big way, maintaining and developing connections. The last thing is pay it forward, right? Um, do good for the sake of doing good, right? If somebody asks you for help, help them, right? You don't have to get something back from it. You can think about it however you want, right? From a religious perspective, that's just what we're supposed to do anyway. You can think about it from a karma perspective or whatever, right? But it builds positivity just in general around you. And again, those people that you help, their careers and their lives are going to take them wherever they're going to take them. But every now and then your paths are going to cross. and they might be in a position to help you, and they will say, yeah, I remember that guy, he's a good guy, right? Most of our career, especially when it comes to promotions and things like that, right, it's a very human thing. A bunch of people sit together and figure out what is it that they're, whether they're going to promote a person or not, right? So when people speak well of you professionally, again, right, it just makes that conversation really easy for your manager, right? But if people speak poorly of you, that makes it really hard, right? The middle ground for most people is that, your manager goes into that meeting and says, hey, I'm thinking of promoting XYZ, right? And everybody just looks at him and goes, who's that guy? What does he do? Right? Never heard of him, right? So now there's this uphill battle for your manager to do the marketing on your behalf. But if you've already done that marketing for your manager, right, then it's a much easier conversation. Oh, I know that guy. Yeah, he's a good guy. He helped us with this or he did that or whatever, right? So anyway, it really, really, really helps. Um, so I know I took a lot of time, so I appreciate you guys listening. बहुत शुक्रिया आपका जो जिन जिन ने dial किया. I hope it was useful.